Hey geeks, I went to Second and Charles, surprise, surprise, and I bought some books, surprise, surprise. This is going to be a book video, so take a look at this. There's a few in there from Barnes and Noble too, because I had some rewards points that I wanted to cash in. So I went in. Well, let's back up a minute. There's a backstory to this. So I don't know how I came across this. I referenced it in my last video. This term maximalist novel, and so hearing that term and understanding what it meant and what it means, what its definition is, got me on this kick where I was like, okay, I've read maximalist novels in the past before and didn't realize it. Not that any of this really means anything, but people come up with all kinds of different terms for genres of literature and so forth. But currently, maximalism is a form of literary genre that I guess is kind of popular, or popular to speak of. And it encompasses such authors as David Foster Wallace, and Murakami. I forget Murakami's first name. And some others that we're going to get into. So the maximalist definition off the top of my head, I guess, is... I'm going into this cold. I don't have any notes in front of me, but essentially it's an expansive book. Jonathan Franzen is another author who gets tied to the maximalist tag, but it's an expansive book that covers a wide range of subject matter. It usually focuses on individual reactions to modern society, or whatever society is during the time period that the book is written. And it has a heavy emphasis on interpersonal relationships and the feelings that those relationships generate. And these types of books can be known to also take segues into sort of like technical explanations about how things work. So if you've read any Neil Stephenson, you'll know what that, he does that quite a bit. And Neil Stephenson is also considered to be, some of his books are considered to be maximalist in nature. Cryptonomicon would be probably the best example, which is a fantastic book. I highly recommend that book. But also I think System of the World, really probably his entire Baroque trilogy is probably maximalist, as is, I think, Terminal Shock. I like Neil Stephenson. I think he's I hated him at first. I couldn't even get past the first 30 pages of Cryptonomicon and System of the World when I first started looking at his work back in like 2008. And I think I've said this before, and you'll see other people say this, like, you have to be ready. You have to be ready for some of these books. Like, these books come to you. You don't go to them. And that was my experience with 1Q84 by Murakami. I couldn't get past 280 pages of it, and I put it down, and I just never went back to it until this past week, and then I couldn't put it down. And I've got about 200 pages left to go to finish that book. It's 1,024 pages. That's the other thing about maximalist novels. They tend to be probably in the over 700 page range. So they're not, they're formidable reads in terms of page count. House of Leaves is considered to be a maximalist novel, although I previously, thought of it as a horror novel. At least from what I know of it. I haven't read it. But if you have, you'll know that the format of the novel can also deviate from the norm, in terms of like the story can be conveyed to you through like emails or text messages or official memoranda, or newscasts, that sort of thing. So this sort of mimicry of modern communication can be used as a device to push the story and the plot along. I saw one book, in fact, I think I bought it, where one of the chapters is nothing but like PowerPoint Venn diagram, which I thought was a very interesting artifact. Being a trained business analyst and somewhat former technical writer, stuff like that kind of captures my interest, especially when it's used in a non-business function and is part of a novel. It's part of the story. So as usual, I had been doing my research on these different authors and novels and adding them, as I found the books, adding them to my shopping cart, whether it be on Amazon or Thrift Books. Always look at Thrift Books first to see if I can get the cheaper used option. But then I hit the used bookstore, and usually you can find them cheaper there than possibly Thrift Books because the shipping isn't always factored in. So I went into Second and Charles. I had probably 3 or 4 books in mind. So I also went on this other tangent where I was looking for authors who are similar to Proust, and specifically his book Memory and Time, which is something like a 10-volume. It's not a 10-volume series. It's just they've broken it up into 10 different books because it, as a whole, it is so long. I think it's like 7,000 pages or something. So you can really, and of course, me being me, I wanted the actual 7,000 page book, which would probably be like about this thick. And you can't really find that, which is kind of a crime. There really ought to be a really formidably bound hardcover version of Proust that's out there. There probably are in antiquarian circles, but in terms of modern books, there is one paperback version of it that contains the complete work, but I've heard the font is like ridiculously tiny, which would make sense. So if you want the complete set, you either have to buy like a 10-volume, set on Amazon, or you can buy it like I have it on Kindle. But I don't know, a formidable book like that, I don't know if I don't want to read it on Kindle because I have no sense of space and volume. Like I don't know where I'm at in, the 10-book series because it's all in one EPUB file. And you can see the percentages, but I don't know, something that big. I need the tactile sensation of holding the book and reading it. If it's like 200, 300 page books on Kindle, like no problem. I'll breeze through those. But this is not that. So yeah, I was looking for authors like Proust. Didn't really find the ones I was looking for. Thomas Mann is one. Both places I went to didn't have any Thomas Mann books. Probably have to find those on Amazon or Thrift Books or so forth. And I'm always interested in authors that are sort of like similar to Franz Kafka. And that kind of melds in with the maximalist thing. David Foster Wallace is a Kafkaesque. Murakami is Kafkaesque. But Bonassero is Kafkaesque. So yeah. So those the fact that maximalism and Kafkaesque sort of the lines there can be blurred, also was appealing to me. So I ended up buying a lot of things that were on my lists, and I think I found a few things that were probably a surprise to me, and I ended up getting those as well. Let's get into it, shall we? Number one I found was I was looking for books that have a science fiction, but also sort of an ancient mythological background to the story. And this was actually recommended to me by ChatGPT. So it's come to this, folks. We're taking recommendations from AI, which really are just recommendations from a Google search. So anyway, I was told by my AI overlord to check out this book. And BN was doing a buy one, get one 50% off, deal. So this is the first book of this series. I think there's 4 books in this series. This is the way the world ends for the last time. It starts with the Great Red Rift across the heart of the world's sole continent, spewing ash that blots out the sun. It starts with death, with a murdered son and a missing daughter. It starts with betrayal and long dormant wounds rising up to fester. This is the Stillness, a land familiar with catastrophe, where the power of the earth is wielded as a weapon and where there is no mercy. Oh, there are 3 books in this series. So, Obelisk Gate and The Stone Sky. So, that was buy one, get one half off. Where's the other one that I got with that? Oh, yeah. I decided to jump into some Tchaikovsky, Children of Time. Everybody raves about Tchaikovsky. Arthur C. Clarke Award, which is good. I love Arthur C. Clarke. Peter F. Hamilton sings his praises. I'm on the fence with Hamilton. I'm trying to get through The Realities of Dysfunction, and that's one of those books where I got kind of halfway through it. I've put it down. I haven't looked at it for about a year. I remember most of it, so I won't have a problem picking it up and reading through it again. But yeah, I kind of need to revisit that this year and see if I can get through it. I didn't find it enjoyable up to that point. Now, that might change because there's 3 books in that Reality Dysfunction series, and Hamilton's another one. I mean, he's kind of a maximalist science fiction writer. It's like an 800-page book, the first one. So anyway, back to Adrian. I've heard a lot of good things about this. I almost bought, I think, Architects of Time first, but they didn't have it on sale like this one. And I almost bought that last week, but the book was damaged at Barnes & Noble. It had a chink in it. And sometimes they'll take, a discount off, but I was like, I'll just get it on Amazon. But I didn't. I didn't end up getting it on Amazon. So I ended up getting this one, and this, I think, is his most famous and popular book at the moment. This is also, I believe, part of a series. Oh, this also has a dying planet. The last remnants of the human race left a dying Earth, desperate to find a new home. Following their ancestors' star maps, they discovered the greatest treasure of the past age, a world terraformed and prepared for human life. That's an interesting concept. But all is not right in this new Eden. The planet is not waiting for them, pristine and unoccupied. New masters have turned it from a refuge into mankind's worst nightmare. Now, 2 civilizations are on a collision course and must fight to survive. As the fate of humanity hangs in the balance, who are the true heirs of this new Earth? Okay. Well, we're going to find out. Calvino, the complete cosmic comics. So I went in wanting to buy Calvino's, what is it called? Something City. Let's see. They don't show his other books in here, which is odd. I think it's called The Quiet City is the other book of his. He's got a few books out. This seems to be, I think, his largest book. It's 400 pages. It's got a pretty decent sized typeset in it. Looks like about a 10-point font. This is a number of, I guess they're kind of short stories or vignettes. And all of them have to do with, this book reminded me of another book called Cosmological Cones, Koans. And these basically sort of like mediations or meditations on the cosmos. Or actually, I should just read from the book here. It'd probably give you a better description. Italo Calvino's beloved cosmic comics cross planets and traverse galaxies, speed up time or slow it down to the particles of an instant. Through the eyes of an ageless guide named Quifugla, QFWFG, Calvino explores natural phenomenon and tells the story of the origins of the universe. Poignant, fantastical, and wise, these 34 dazzling stories collected here in one definitive volume relate complex scientific and mathematical concepts to our everyday world. They are indelible and unfailingly delightful literary achievement. So he is kind of pegged, I think, as a Kafkaesque author. I don't know so much about in this book, but this book interested me. Because it's in the fiction section, but it is it's on a nonfiction subject. It's on, physics and astrophysics, and cosmology, and so forth. So we'll check it out. Austerlitz by W.G. Sebald, also kind of a Kafkaesque maximalist. I've heard a lot of good things about this book. This is the 10th anniversary edition. Austerlitz is a story of a man's search for the answer to life's central riddle. A small child, when he comes to England on a kinder transport in the summer of 1939, Jacques Austerlitz is told nothing of his real family by the Welsh Methodist minister and his wife who raise him. When he is a much older man, fleeting memories return to him, and obeying an instinct he only dimly understands, Austerlitz follows their trail back to the world he left behind a half-century before. And it's peppered with some photographs, which is kind of interesting. No, actually, now that I think about it, this was on the Proust list. This was recommended as works similar to Proust. Because it references a lot of time and memory. But I skimmed some of the prose in it, and I did like the writing style. As part of what this experiment is about, is I'm studying different writing styles of these various authors in this genre. Well, I should say in these various genres for various reasons. I never had a copy of War and Peace. I heard somebody say on YouTube the other day, this is the book that everybody pretends that they read. And this was at Second and Charles, and it was not even $5. And I mean, this is is this the Penguin edition? No, this is a Barnes & Noble classic. So, yeah, this was a resale used. 1,000 plus pages. Font size looks to be about a 9.5 point font. I've never read the entire thing. I mean, it's, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm about to finish a 1,024 page book, the majority of which I've read in under 2 weeks. So, I will enjoy this, I'm sure. It's just going to take some time. It takes an investment. Less TV, more reading is the trade-off I found. This is a book that I have a thing for reference books, and I never even knew this book existed till I came across it. The Dictionary of Imaginary Places. And this is quite a thick one, too. Among the lands within, so this is 1,200 entries, over 220 maps and illustrations. Among the lands within, Camelot, Shangri-La, Narnia, Avalon, Cloud Cuckoo Land, Franz Kafka's The Castle, which I love that, Utopia, Neverwhere, Wonderland, Stepford, Arkham, Earthsea, Middle Earth, King Solomon's Mines, Digitopolis, and more. This book is in really good shape. It retailed for $40. I got it for $11. And it's got, it's got pretty much every literary fictional, imaginary world that you could think of. So it's a very interesting book. It's a very interesting reference book. Because, well, for a number of reasons. For one, if you ever hear someone in conversation say, oh yeah, Grand Duchy. Where's that? What does that mean? I'm just looking at it right here in the book. Grand Duchy, a modest state in Germany, tourists can visit the pleasant village of Seigartsweiler and marvel at the beauties of Vulture Rock. But the Grand Duchy is famous mainly as the native country of Muir Cat, the only tomcat in the world to have solved the secret of feline philosophy. So I guess I've never heard of that before. Then that's interesting. And then I guess it goes on, it references, in this case, it references the various books in which this realm is written about. But then you've got more obvious ones like, I'm sure like Oz is in here, the world of Oz. Let's see. Yeah. They got a map. They have a map of Oz in this one. So, yeah, interesting. It's good to know about imaginary realms if you're. I'm interested in world building. So a book like that, it would be of interest to someone who's trying to get into world building. Jonathan Franzen, The Corrections. So this is a maximalist novelist, and this is probably, I guess, his most famous novel. So yeah, here's a random page. Here's a perfect example of what you find in a maximalist novel. Some sort of technical or scientific chart or explanation as part of the story. What else? Let's see if we can find something. I mean, Neil Stephenson's books are like, they have stuff like that all the time. So, that kind of appeals to people that are like nerdy, kind of geeky, especially people who are, in IT, which I kind of am or was or might be again in the future. Past, present, future, who cares anymore? It's all the same, man. It's all just linear time. The Corrections is a grandly entertaining novel for the new century, a comic, tragic masterpiece about a family breaking down in an age of easy fixes. So this is like modern day. Yeah, so David Foster Wallace sang the praises of this book before he sadly took his own life. And it's Oprah's book club. So, not that that means anything. So, yeah, I figured I would check it out. Got it used, Barnes and or Second and Charles. I don't know if I'm gonna. I have another Franzen books. I don't know if I'm gonna read this one first or the other one. I think I'll read the other one first because it seems like it's kind of a build up to this one. Or no, wait, the other one that I got might be a sequel to this one. I don't know. We'll see. And then there's Pinchon. Mason and Dixon. I wish I could have found a paperback version of this, but they didn't have a paperback version. They only had this hardcover version. And a paperback version new was actually more than this used hardcover. So, with Pinchon, what I was told was and when I say told, I'm speaking about the wisdom of people on the internet. It's told to start with Gravity's Rainbow first, and I probably will. I have read some sections of this, and I do find it to be very interesting. This kind of reminds me of Don DeLillo's Underworld, which I read back in like 2000 when it first came out, and I liked that book a lot, and that was another very challenging read. It was, I think it was 800 or 900 pages, maybe more. Underworld is a brick of a book, but it's DeLillo's magnum opus, and since then every book he's written has only been around 180 pages. so I think with Underworld he was like, yeah, I'm not writing another book that long and that big. Now DeLillo just kind of focuses on like one or two characters instead of this big sprawling multi-decade epic. That's a commentary on modern society from the Cold War up through the Information Age, and sort of a treatise on capitalism versus socialism and the changing mores of individuals. Now that I think about that, that would put Tom Wolfe into the maximalist novel category too. I'm shocked that ChatGPT did not talk about Tom Wolfe, because Bonfire of the Vanities is definitely maximalist. Bonfire of the Vanities is one of my favorite books. And then A Man in Full, which is kind of the sequel to Bonfire of the Vanities, in terms of sequel, not in terms of an actual character sequel, but sequel in terms of like, hey, here's another book about another city. Bonfire of the Vanities was about New York City. In the 80s, and A Man in Full was about Atlanta in the mid-90s. And having lived in Atlanta in the mid-90s, I found that book to be very realistic. So, yeah, Tom Wolfe was able to tap into zeitgeist of the time geographically, but that's because he would go and basically live in the areas that he was writing about and really get to know, all of the socio-political things that were going on. So maybe I need to go back and talk to OpenAI and have them correct their assumptions. Anyway, Gravity's Rainbow, I'll probably start with this one first for Pynchon. I think that's how you pronounce it. And then we'll get into Mason and Dixon. Gravity's Rainbow, I think, is more of a Cold War, World War II, mid-20th century book. Mason and Dixon is a... pre-revolutionary, pre-American Revolution. So, that'll be interesting. That time period will be very interesting. A lot of themes there. This is a book I didn't have on my list. It's a biography of Rasputin, but I came across it because I was kind of looking for something on Rasputin anyway. This is a biography, so it's nonfiction. Got this for $7, and I think this is one of the more recent Rasputin biographies because it has updated information on him that was pulled out of some files that I think were in the Soviet archives that hadn't really come to light. Rasputin is a really interesting character, and what his role was in the Bolshevik Revolution and the Russian Revolution, it has been a little murky throughout the years and may still be so, but also as this sort of he was basically kind of a mystic figure as well. Weird dude, but I guess what I'm trying to figure out is like how much impact did he have on history versus in actuality versus how much impact people think that he had. So interesting cat. The Keep by Jonathan Egan. So, Jennifer Egan. Excuse me. Jennifer Egan also came up in my list of Kafkaesque writers. And when I first saw this book, I was thinking of that movie The Keep, the horror movie, which is based on a novel. And I don't think this is that, although it's very similar. It is about two siblings, I think, that inherit some kind of a Bavarian castle or something. And they try to restore it, but they come across all kinds of strange and odd characters. Yeah, so for $5, and it's basically, it says it's a used book, but I mean it's in brand new condition. And I was skimming through some of it. I liked the dialogue. I liked the way it was written. It's got these very. I'll give you an example of how she writes her dialogue. It's almost like a technical document. It's like somebody who took notes at a meeting. Haruki Murakami says, since I was liking 1Q84 so much, I was like, all right, I got to start getting more Murakami. Murakami really, to me, maximalist Kafkaesque, or Kafkaesque maximalism, I think is a good way to categorize him. And he's acknowledged his Kafka as an influence on him. He has a book called Kafka on the Beach, which I'll get around to reading at some point. But this was the only book by Murakami they had at Second and Charles, the one that I was in. And so I figured I would pick it up. This one sounds kind of odd, but all of his books are odd. So, an advertising executive receives a postcard from a friend and casually appropriates the image from an advertisement. What he doesn't realize is that included in the scene is a mutant sheep with a star on its back, and in using this photo, he has unwittingly captured the attention of a man who offers a menacing ultimatum: find the sheep or face dire consequences. Thus begins a surreal and elaborate quest that takes readers from Tokyo to the remote mountains of northern Japan, where the unnamed protagonist has a surprising confrontation with his demons. All right, that's definitely Kafkaesque, all the way. Sounds like something I'd get into. And this one is not 1,000 pages or more, like 1Q84. This is only 353 pages. If I put my mind to it, I can probably knock this out in 2 or 3 nights. I will have to turn off my phone, however. Another Jennifer Egan book, A Visit from the Goon Squad. So this is the book that she's most well known for, I think, at this point, and is supposed to be the one that delves most into the area of social commentary, Kafkaisms, and maximalism. And the premise of it kind of sets that up. Benny is an aging former punk rocker and record executive. Sasha is the passionate, troubled young woman he employs. Here, Jennifer Egan brilliantly reveals their past, along with the inner lives of a host of other characters whose pasts intersect with theirs. With music pulsing on every page, A Visit from the Goon Squad is a startling, exhilarating novel of self-destruction and redemption. So I like the punk rock and music angle to it. Clearly, there's probably going to be some sort of sexual tension in this book between the two main characters. And it was used. It was $5. You can't go wrong. Oh, yeah. So another Franzen novel, Freedom, by the author of The Correction. So Franzen, I always thought was like a mystery writer for some reason. And then I found out that he was not a mystery writer. So I think this was the follow-up book to The Corrections. I think this is the one that was published after The Corrections. But it seems sort of, I mean, it's definitely in the sort of, again, the maximalist vein, modern social commentary. This is something that is like torn right out of today's society. Patty and Walter Berglund were the new pioneers of Old St. Paul, the gentrifiers, the hands-on parents, the avant-garde of the Whole Foods generation. Patty was the ideal sort of neighbor who could tell you where to recycle your batteries and how to get the local cops to actually do their jobs. She was an enviably perfect mother and the wife of Wallet's dreams. Together, the wife of Walter's dreams. These glasses are just not cutting it this morning. Together with Walter, environmental lawyer, communist cyclist, total family man, she was doing her small part to build a better world. But now, in the new millennium, the Berglunds have become a mystery. Why has their teenage son moved in with the aggressively Republican family next door? Why has Walter taken a job working with Big Coal? Why exactly is Richard Katz, outre rocker, and Walter's college best friend and rival still doing in the picture? Most of all, what has happened to Patty? Why has the bright star of Barrier Street become a very different kind of neighbor, an implacable fury coming unhinged before the street's attentive eyes? This is kind of like a modern-day version of The Burbs, that Tom Hanks movie. The books are piling up back here. What else? One more. Oh, yeah. Roberto Bolaño's 2666. So, showed this off in the last video. 3 academics on the trail of a reclusive German author, a New York reporter on his first Mexican assignment, a widowed philosopher, a police detective in love with an elusive older woman. These are among the searchers drawn to the border city of Santa Teresa, where over the course of a decade, hundreds of women have disappeared. In the words of the Washington Post, with 2666, Bolaño joins the ambitious overachievers of the 20th century novel, those like Proust, Musil, Joyce, Gaddis, Pynchon, Fuentes, and Volman, who pushed the novel far past its conventional size and scope to encompass an entire era, deploying encyclopedic knowledge and stylistic verve to offer a grand, if sometimes idiosyncratic, summation of their culture and the novelist's place in it. Bolaño has joined the immortals. And, so that's what I want. I want novels that have size and scope, encompass eras or an era or eras, decades, character change, character evolution, historical backdrop, societal commentary, touches of surrealism and supernaturalism. That's what I'm looking for. So that's I think I've found quite a bit of that in these books. So that's kind of been my new obsession as maximalist novels. And Kafka has always been an obsession of mine. But having read all of Kafka, I'm looking for others who are similar to him. Want to throw in a bonus book? Some science fiction. So as you know, I love the Warhammer 40,000 stuff. This is Dark Imperium, Godblight. This is apparently the 3rd book in this little mini series, and I don't have the other 2 books, but it looks like it can probably be read as a standalone. If you know something about the lore, you can kind of jump in really on any of these books. I like to read this little series, in chronological order, but I think in terms of this one, the other 2 books are kind of hard to find in physical format, but they are on Kindle. So I'm on the fence. I might read the other 2 and then read this one, but since I have this one, I might just go ahead and read this one. I'm kind of familiar with the backstory of the other 2 books anyway. But yeah, this is from the era Indomitus. And it's about Robert Guilliman, basically Robert Guilliman, and his fallen brother Mortarion bring them inexorably together on Iax, which is a planet. Once a jewel of the Imperium, the Garden World is dying as the plans of the Lord of Death to use it as a fulcrum to drag the stellar realm of Ultramar into the warp come to deadly fruition. While Guilliman attempts to prevent the destruction of his kingdom, Mortarion schemes to bring his brother low with the Godblight, a disease created in the cauldron of Nurgle itself, made with the power to destroy a son of the Emperor. Primarchs clash on ravaged landscapes of Iax. The gods go to war, and the wider galaxy balances on a knife edge of destruction. As something powerful stirs in the sea of souls, only one thing is certain. No matter who wins the last great clash of the Plague War, the repercussions of victory will echo through eternity. This is like a fucking Mastodon album. this is... I mean, it's just so... You know, it's just... it's, you know, it's heavy, man. It's, yeah. It's Viking tragedy turned to infinity. It's Greek and Viking tragedy in space set to infinity. Not 11. We're not turning it to 11. We're going to turn it to infinity. So that's what's cool about Warhammer. You know, it's just so... It's almost absurd how I don't know, bombastic, I guess you could say it is, you know? That's entertainment for you. So, yeah, I'll probably start reading that. All right. Was that enough books for you? As I read through these, which is not all going to happen this year, I will, of course, probably keep you updated. All right. Next video, we'll do some... So we did some comics in the last video. We're doing books in this video. So the next video will be all comics, I promise. And then if I can get around to it, like I mentioned, I want to do a video on AI comics. Deep breaths. And I want to do a video on the state of the comics industry. However, I am probably leaving in the next 24 to 48 hours to go camping. And this will occur for a number of days. And during that camping sojourn, I will probably visit one, maybe two bookstores / comic shops. I'm heading to North Carolina, I think for about 10 or 11 days. And part of that will be investigating. One will be a bookstore I've already been to, which is my favorite bookstore pretty much anywhere. It's in Asheville, North Carolina. And then there's a couple of good comic shops in the Asheville area that I have not visited before. So I might take a sneak into one of those in between hiking and trail running and camping. So yeah, I will probably make videos. I think I'm going to probably make videos of those visits. I'm not one to be too keen on just walking into people's shops filled with the camera rolling. It's not my style. I like to go in and kind of get a feel first, and even at that, I'm not going to shoot a video in the middle of somebody's store and be like, "Oh, hey, I got all that." You know, I did that at Denver Mile High Comics, and I felt kind of awkward about it. And I don't know, they were maybe side eyeing me a little bit. I don't think they cared too much, but I just in Mile High Comics, they got a lot of merchandise in there that's super expensive. And I don't know if they want people kind of just plastering that up on the internet, you know. So yeah, it's probably going to be more like I'll go in there. If I make any purchases, I'll probably just show those off, maybe in the front of the store when I'm sitting in the parking lot or something like that. So we'll see. I gotta feel the vibe. The bookstore, I can probably get away with doing a video in there, but again, I have this thing where people should probably be kind of quiet in bookstores. I'm old school. They should treat them sort of like their libraries, but you know, nobody does that anymore. People go in and they scream and they yell and they act like they're in their living room or something. So there's no decorum. So I don't know. But I don't know if it's still appropriate to be shooting a video in the aisle of, you know, the anthropology section or something like, "Oh, hey, I found this great book," you know. So yeah. So other videos might have to wait till I get back from my trip. Long story short. Till then, till the next one, stay geek.